Hello, my name is Parker.
And my name is Ned.
And this is the Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. Ned, how are you? How was your week?
I'm doing good. You know, not to get people's hopes up too much, but I have had conversations with multiple publishers over this prior week, so I'm feeling funky, feeling fresh. And then I also recorded an episode with KBOO Portland Community Radio that you can give a listen to. It's primarily board game related, but I did shout out yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. So if you want to hear the 5 seconds of me shouting out the show for the people that care about Star Wars Unlimited.
And talking about board game theory.
Yeah.
In a non-SWU context.
Yes.
Right. Give it a listen. This is a bit of a special episode. This is our Swoodeebee episode. But before we get into that, as always, we played a game tonight to get into the mood to talk about SWU, the Swood. Ned, tell us about the match.
So I was playing Quinlan Tarkentown against Anakin Blue, piloted by Parker. I guess you could ask who else might be piloting it, but in this particular case, it was piloted by Parker. So this was kind of prompted by somebody was asking questions on the Blue Sky place about what they should bring to their PQ, and they were waffling between flavors of Sabine and Quinlan. And I kind of leaned them. I gave my 2 cents, which is I think that Sabine is a better positioned deck in this meta. It's fast. It's really aggressive. I'm not like 100% on its matchups into Double Yellow Han, but like the games that I watched of Sabine at the PQ, it seemed really good. And so I wanted to play Quinlan because I hadn't seen a lot of Quinlan to just get like a sense of how it was. And given its showing, like admittedly, I'm not maybe the best Quinlan pilot in the universe, but it did a really good, did the sort of aggro control thing where it ran Anakin out of resources and then it just didn't have anywhere to go. Like I couldn't close the game out fast enough before you started getting like your Lukes down, and I kept hitting you with hand hate, with, you know, Spark of Rebellion and things to try and keep your hand clear, but you can't discard the top of the opponent's deck, right? Like at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, you won. I misplayed at the end. I should have claimed the initiative.
Yes. I think you would have won. Had you claimed the initiative, I think you would have won.
I agree, given that I had the turn that I died, I had just drawn my third Luke, and so I just had another one queued up. So very frustrating. Also, I had a tech ready to, and you know, like 2 Cassians in the resource row. Like you said, it's Anakin is all my favorite cards. Deck.
Yeah.
It's hard for me, I think, to play a leader who I don't use as a leader that much. I think that's the same struggle I have with Bosk and so forth, is those leaders who are just awesome as leaders. Like Vader is awesome as a leader, but also brings with him
he's a hugely impactful unit, right? Like when you
he's an impactful unit, but he also like when he's on his leader side, you're getting to play him. Whereas I feel like with Anakin this time, as was the last time I played Anakin with you, I actually fired the front side of his ability a couple times. To great effect. You know, R2 at 3 feels good. But, it's a fun deck. I can see why it does reasonably well. I don't know. I kind of was convinced towards the end of the Shadows meta with Han 2 Blue that while I like all the cards in Red Blue Hero, I don't know if I like the play style that the cards expect. Like to do well, I want to play it a little slower. I think. I just
a little more controlling.
My toys.
You want the big mid-range style. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a good deck. I don't know if it's my deck. All right. So I wanted to talk about Swoodeebee.
Yes.
I wanted to specifically talk about the ghosts of Swoodeebee past, present, and future. I wrote some of the outline for this episode in early December, and I was feeling Christmassy.
So we're not doing, just to clarify, are we not doing that bit? Because I bought some chains that I was going to rattle around.
Oh, yeah. As a huge fan of all versions of the Christmas Carol, from Bill Murray to the Muppets, you can't do the 3 spirits without Jacob Marley.
Yes.
And we're absolutely going to do Jacob Marley.
Okay.
Ned, you will be playing the part of Jacob Marley as the bitter, aggrieved partner. And in fact, the context for the Jacob Marley bit is it occurred to me.
Yes.
My name is Parker. I am the co-host of the Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast, as I say at the beginning of every episode. and I think every one of our dear listeners knows this, but I'm the person behind Swoodeebee.com. And when I was putting this together and just kind of putting out an outline, I realized we haven't really mentioned that since like episode 2 or 3. No. And that's just not something we talk about. And it's entirely, and we've picked up a very respectable following, and it's entirely possible there's somebody in their car commute, like right now, going, "Wait, what?" I don't think that's likely, but there's a non-zero chance that that's possible.
Oh,
like, where did we act like this data from the website fell off the back of a truck, but I mean, it's from me, and I just want to acknowledge that, it is me, and just in case you didn't know, I assume everybody knows, but it's not. I mean, every episode of The Force Unlimited is linked from the front page of Swoodeebee.com.
Yeah.
As well as other shows where we make an appearance. So there's clearly a connection. But I just want to kind of since we don't normally talk about it, I want to kind of say that out loud. And the Jacob Marley bit is the why don't we really talk about it? Why don't we talk about Swoodeebee.com on The Force Unlimited very often? And there's kind of, in my mind, 3 reasons. There's the important one, the big one, and the selfish one.
Okay.
The important one is that Ned's not Swoodeebee.com.
I'm not. I do mark cards occasionally. I do occasionally go through and update some of the tags on some of the cards. So I'm Ned a fingernail of contribution.
But really what that's doing. So the story there, dear listener, is that when I used to run the model, the underlying card data for the Ned math model, tune in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Comes from Swoodeebee.com. And I was running these exports, and then Ned was having to go in to judge the numbers. And he was doing that by hand.
Which
and
sucks.
That is...
Yeah.
It's onerous, right? And so then there's a secret back end where Ned can put Ned math onto cards. But, that's something Swoodeebee is doing for Ned, not something Ned's doing. I mean, you do it to Swoodeebee, but that's not for Swoodeebee. That is very much for Ned. And I think...
I will say, not to hypercut you off here, but listeners, if you want to see the Ned math, what the Ned math says that the card cost should be or stats should be, get in the comments. I mean, I don't think it would be that hard to have that as an extra field for what the current Ned math is.
You're not wrong. I've considered when I feel like when we're more confident, when there's a level of quantification for the really wrong cards.
Yes.
Right? The best card can't be Moff Gideon's Cruiser, right? If that's I feel like as long as that's the best card in the game, then there's not a lot of value in in Ned math.
I mean, the second best card in the game is Darth Vader. So the Darth Vader unit,
which is fair.
Fair,
right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm hyper derailing. Let's get back on topic.
Oh no, please, Ned, hyper derail, because dear listener, I'm usually such a quiet half of this show, but this is going to be a me-centric episode. So Ned, please jump in whenever you want. So reason number 1, the really important reason, is that it's not Ned, and I don't want it to be associated with Ned. Not that I don't want Ned to be associated with it, but I don't want people coming at Ned for features. Password resets. Ned is not an admin and does not need to be pinged and
please don't.
So Ned already struggles to engage with the Discord community and so forth as it is. I don't need him, being brought in. The big reason was that when we kind of started this out, when we started the Force Unlimited, I was unclear how Fantasy Flight felt about Swoodeebee.com, and so there was some question of, they might really not like it. And so having that strong association might hurt the Force Unlimited's opportunities to participate as content creators in the content creator ecosystem, get interviews and so forth. And in the first 3 episodes, if you see it under my name, it said Swoodeebee, and we changed that out real quick, and I just became curious. And so there was a concern that maybe Swoodeebee was disfavored. There was also a question of maybe it was really favored, but they just couldn't say anything. Optimistically, I hoped, right? It's a big resource. It's used by almost all the content creators. You go look at YouTube videos. It is just deck image after deck image that is work that I did, and so maybe they were really appreciative, but can't say anything. But maybe the Force Unlimited would be a bit of a fig leaf where And
the
it
old
turns out
Batman,
I don't.
you know, where
Yeah,
Gotham
right, where,
City
like-
needs you, but they can't officially recognize you, kind of a thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Well, need is a strong word.
Sure, okay.
Need is a strong word.
Okay.
I'm going to go with appreciate.
Appreciate, yeah.
And then I feel like over the last year, neither has borne fruit. Like, clearly they're aware of my association with the database, but I'm a grown adult. I'm allowed to have two SWU hobbies. One is not the other. So it's the disfavor is clearly not hurting us. They're happy to come on the show, and we'll hopefully I expect to do so again. And the inverse, the
converse.
Inverse is also not.
Yeah.
The converse is also not true in that, like, we haven't gotten any swag. We weren't invited to Minnesota. Like, there's no benefit coming to the Force Unlimited by virtue. We're standing on our own merits, and our own merits in the
Marginal.
show are very marginal, math-heavy, dry podcast. So there's no pros or cons by virtue of Fantasy Flight, which means that, in a sense, not talking about Swoodeebee is really only hindering ourselves, because it is a resource that we could tap into and talk about that that I wasn't, because I wanted to see how something played out, and the answer is it's just the null hypothesis. There's just nothing is happening. So we may talk about it a little bit more, but the important reason that we don't talk about it is selfishly, or sorry, not the important, that was the big reason. The selfish reason is that I enjoy having an hour every 2 weeks where I talk aggressively about Star Wars Unlimited, but I'm not the Swoodeebee guy. Like, don't get me wrong, I love being the Swoodeebee guy.
That's got to be the reason why you do it, right?
Right. There's a non-trivial value in being the guy.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it, but it is also at the same time it kind of informs almost every conversation about SWU that I have, and I do have a lot of conversations about Star Wars Unlimited. And when we talk, Ned, you're the guy, right? Like, you're bringing all the math, like, you have all the history with TCG theory, and this is a chance for me to just talk about the game and be excited about the game as a Timmy without any further expectations or questions or feature requests or whatever. And I put a lot of value in that, and so that's kind of the Jacob Marley. That's why we have not talked about Swoodeebee much on the show, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but I still think, like, this is not the Swoodeebee show.
You don't think that people will be really excited by hearing you talk about database backends?
I mean, I listen to podcasts about database backends, and no, like, I don't think so. We'll see. This is the episode where maybe I talk a little bit about it, and we'll see what those YouTube numbers do.
No. Don't get ahead of yourself. I think that the overlap between people who care about CRUD apps and the people who care about Star Wars trading card games is larger than you might think.
Oh, I absolutely believe it. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So, the Ghost of Swoodeebee Past. From whence Swoodeebee? So I've talked about this in kind of pieces on a bunch of other shows, but I've never talked about it on our show. So I bought Swoodeebee.com on May 9th, I think. May 9th or 10th, like right when it was announced. I had this idea of maybe there being a database called The Force Unlimited. So that's why I bought theforceunlimited.com. And then I was sitting there at the domain registrar, like, is there any chance? Is there any chance? I mean, it's a 5-letter .com domain.
Yeah.
There's no way this is available. And it doesn't cost anything to type it in, and lo and behold, $12 later, there I have it. And I will be honest, my plan was not to do anything with it. My plan wasn't to sit on it. My plan wasn't to sell it. You and I are fathers, Ned.
Yes.
And I will say, coming from some of the LCG backgrounds, I was briefly a moderator of the Marvel Champions Discord when Marvel Champions was pretty new.
Yeah.
And I was pretty present there. I was pretty pumped about the game. They asked Jedi Geek Girl and Kennedy Hawk from Space Arena Ground Arena were moderators, and they asked me to join. And I saw how... So, if you're not familiar with Marvel Champions, it is another Disney Fantasy Flight game. It is a co-op TCG.
Yeah, just to take a quick time out here, it is so weird. I know it shouldn't be weird to me, but it is weird to me how far the mouse's tendrils extend throughout, like, the larger space.
Oh.
Yeah.
it's not weird at all, and I'll explain it to you real simple, Ned. The mouse likes money.
Yes.
And the mouse has pretty much a lock on little girls. I'm not being gendered. My son loves Disney movies and Disney musicals. I'm just saying from like a 4-quadrant kind of that marketing analysis, sweeping generalizations. Disney much, I mean, by virtue of the princess market, Disney pretty much has a lock. And you can like read like they were struggling to break in with the boy market. And so they went out and they spent a few $1 billion, and now they own the boy market, right? Like, and girls are allowed to own Marvel, and girls are allowed to love Star Wars. Like,
yes, absolutely.
Let's not get into that.
And boys are allowed to love Disney princesses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But they went out and speaking to like sweeping generalization demographics, and they bought some boy toys, and now they own them. Right? And yes, like I realize as I say that I referred to Star Wars as a bunch of boy toys, but they went out and they just bought 2 huge IPs, and now they own both. You know, like
they
whatever.
Childhood.
It turns out if you have money, you can just buy popular things. You know, all it takes is enough money, multiple $1 billion, but you can do it. If you have multiple $1 billion and a desire, you can do it. So, Marvel Champions.
Yes.
I'm assuming every SWU listener is familiar, but if you're not like into it, if you haven't played it, the core box was Spider-Man, Black Panther. No, sorry, Spider-Man, Iron Man. Yeah,
it was Black Panther. You know, it was absolutely Black Panther.
Black Panther, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Black Panther, She-Hulk, and Miss Marvel. And
no, Miss Marvel wasn't. Captain Marvel, not Miss Marvel. The one that flies. The one that flies.
Right, yes, Captain Marvel. And sorry, Miss Marvel and Captain America were like the first 2 announced expansions.
Yeah.
And if you had not been paying attention to modern Marvel marketing, you might not know who Miss Marvel was. Amazing comic, amazing character. Like one of my favorite comics where she like first meets Wolverine. I love that issue. But if you hadn't been reading her comic and you hadn't really been paying attention to the marketing, you might not have seen the rise of Miss Marvel's prominence. She appears aggressively in toys aimed at like sub 12-year-olds, right? And like if you're playing Marvel Champions, you're probably 30 plus and out of shape. But that's not who Miss Marvel is like targeted at. Miss Marvel is targeted at children, right? She's up down there with like Reptile and so forth. Like I watch Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, where it's like Spidey, Miles Morales, known as Spin, and Ghost Spider, like where they're equals, and you know, like the rotating through guest cast, like puts the prominence of these characters does not map to my like.
Your internal Claremont, how important these characters are in the relative
does not map, but that's because they're not marketing it to me. They're marketing it to little children.
Right.
So Miss Marvel made perfect sense. Sure. Right. And also there has to be some element of a I don't know what the mandates from Disney are. I don't know what the approvals, but like if you're going to market a game in 20 something, it's a bad look to just release male character after male character after male character. So they're going to be releasing female characters, and the Marvel Champions community got real toxic about the idea that like Miss Marvel was coming before Wolverine, was coming before Daredevil, was coming before Thor, all these like these are the classics, and who's this Miss Marvel, and you got real sexist and a little racist, and it was like really uncomfortable, and I kind of noped out like of the whole online participation with Marvel Champions right then and there. I was like and so when I saw Star Wars Unlimited getting announced, like I don't know if you know this, dear listener, but Star Wars like takes the cake when it comes to a problematic audience. And so my thought
press X to doubt here part like I think that it is a problematic audience, but I think that there are more problematic audiences out there than Star Wars fans.
Let me I absolutely without going into specifics, I suspect though that if you were to like for me, it's the it's once you get beyond where Star Wars is at, you're at a point where like the default assumption is that it's a problematic audience, right? Like where it's like it's like questionable that like you're a fan of this. Like you don't have to justify that you're a Star Wars fan, right? Like you're allowed to just say I like Star Wars, and people don't assume you're sexist or racist or something. But there's definitely like fandoms where like you have to be like, I like this, but right, and that's not the point. Point being is, I think we can agree there's an undercurrent to Star Wars fandom.
There have been elements of the Star Wars fandom that have not been the best. Not been the best.
Yeah. And I want to know part of that.
Yeah.
So like my thought process with Swoodeebee is like I had 2 young kids. I was like, I'm not in the position to start building something. No. And so I was like, but I'm just going to get this because why not? $12, right? And I'll give it to someone who's building something cool, who who I trust to build a community that is the kind of place where I'd want my kid to come hang out and talk with people. And so I did that. And it sat there for 2 months until you and I went to the coast. So our families went to the coast. And small children at the beach get tired early.
They do.
Wear themselves out. They go to bed a little earlier than maybe they were used to. And so I suddenly had myself like extra free time. I'm on vacation. I have all this like coding energy that I'm not spending. I like my job. I'm not burned out. And so I had been reading about this new library. Now I'm going to try to, Ned, you do such a wonderful job of explaining math to people like me who don't understand it, while at the same time explaining just enough so that the people who do really understand, because I know we have dear listeners like me who don't understand math, and we have dear listeners who very much do, like, and are calling you out on like some assumptions you're making, and so you do a good job of like meeting both of those. And I know we have listeners who build software for a living, and I know we have listeners who struggle to turn on their iPhone. So I'm going to try to acknowledge both. There was a library, a programming tool that I was very excited to try out, and called HTMX, and it belongs to a principle of the idea that JavaScript is unnecessary to build cool, modern web apps. It's written in JavaScript, but that's not the point. The point is, it does it. You shouldn't have to use it. And I thought it was really fascinating. And so I was looking for a project to use it on. And we were reaching that critical mass of Star Wars Unlimited cards where I was like, I want that scryfall, right? Like there was more than a page. Like, I want to be able to ask questions. Like, how much of this have we seen? And so I started building a tool at the Oregon coast in a week. And that was always like kind of the primary purpose, the original purpose of Swoodeebee, was to be able to ask questions about cards. Like, not show me blue cards to put in my deck, but what are the blue cards that have this trait or this keyword that have this cost or this much power? Like, you're trying to fit niches, right? Or answer internet arguments, right?
Right. Let's pretend, for example, that you are a Grand Inquisitor player and you want to look for things that have 3 or less power and more than 2 hit points and are in certain color combinations for a specific use case that makes deck building much easier.
Yeah. And so I started building it, and it was great. And it did well, and people responded to it. And then people asked for Deck Builder. And I'm an obliging guy, and I started building Deck Builder, and that was not fun. Because the tool that I had chosen was designed to build these kind of like static, fast websites, because it's always been my belief that nobody cares about me. They just care about the cards. And so Swoodeebee should try to be as invisible as possible. You're delivering information about cards. You're now delivering information about decks. That's what people want to see. And so the Deck Builder was a little rough, but I built it. And then people wanted a collection manager, and the features kept growing. And then modern math is adjacent to programming. I think that's fair to say. I think
that's completely fair. Yeah.
If you're doing math that involves 0 computers, like, I have to assume that's very esoteric or like elementary.
I would say that the most powerful mathematicians that are outside of certain subfields are not necessarily using computers as part of them, but automated proof checking is something that helps.
Proving their theory after, But you got to be able to program, like something like R or Python or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
but R is for statisticians.
like I said, math, right? Like,
Oh
like
man,
I'm just drawing big circle.
You just started a whole bunch of people who have strong opinions about what a tensor is are going to be coming to your house.
I welcome. So all code bases, I think it's fair to say, are held together by duct tape and baling wire.
110%. Like, no matter what.
Like, even if you have all the time in the world and all the money in the world, you start with compromises and it's just downhill from there. The difference is that... So I've never driven a stick shift in my life or a pickup truck, so this analogy may be a little...
strained,
weak,
yeah,
a little strained. But if you think about it like a Toyota Tacoma, right? Like a 20-year-old Tacoma. I think that's called a Hilux for our European friends. The Tacoma, 20-year-old Tacoma, it's got one door that's a different color because you got it from scrapyard, and you got to kick it just the right way to shift up in the second gear, and everything. There's a couple creaks and places where you shove it with your shoulder, and there's some duct tape. But when that Tacoma rolled off the line, it was intended to be a car.
Yes.
Right? And that was its original intent. Swoodeebee is a car, but it's a car in the way that, like, the cars in Chippendale's Rescue Rangers are cars, where, like, the original intent of the steering wheel was to keep soda in a glass bottle. The original intent of the wheels was to button together a woman's sweater, and the original intent of the engine block was to hold matches, right? Like, we have left, like there's not a lot of, like, intentionality behind Swoodeebee from a standpoint of it's a big site now.
Yeah.
And it, had I known that, I would not have chosen the choices I made at the beach. I made some bad choices, and some of it is like,
no, you made choices. You made choices with imperfect information, right? Like
sure,
yeah.
I mean, that's part of it,
yes.
But I mean, there's also an element, like, if you think there's throwaway code.
Sure.
Right? I was actually talking to a coworker who, like, has some throwaway code that is now being relied on by other people. Like, he wrote it as just like a one-off.
Boy, do I know that feeling. That's, yeah.
To answer some questions for himself, and now there's other people, and they're like reaching, and so I'm reaching out. I'm like, hey, I noticed you did this twice. That seems weird. Why would you do that twice? And he got like, as you know, Ned, my natural cadence is
helpful, but yeah.
Like especially in a professional context, I'm 6'5".
Yeah.
I have a vernacular. I have a baritone, and so when I come over, I'm like, why did you? In my head, I'm just like,
hey,
curious. I'm like, hey, I'm learning. Yeah. I want to learn from you. You know more than I do. Why did you?
What's the theory here?
Why did you do this twice? But I don't do this gesture at work, so I'm standing there. I'm like, I noticed you did this twice. Why did you do this twice? And he's like, and so, like, I understand that, like, the nature of, like, throwaway code when it becomes, more public. There's that. That's all. Like, Swoodeebee is just, like, started there and has just built into a production app that supports like 60,000 players, and that strain is starting to show. So let's kind of get into closer to the present, the ghost of Swoodeebee present. So last October, we're staring down Twilight, and probably the most requested feature on Swoodeebee, and the feature that I miss the most, and the feature that I think the players I like and respect the most keep asking for, is to have the search syntax in the deck builder, right? Like,
yep.
I'm going to apologize. There's one corner of the Swoodeebee website I never use. It's the form search. Like, I try to, you remember those old Just for Men commercials, right? It was Just for Men and the hair. Oh no, not Just for Men. The Hair Club for Men, and it's
I'm not like just. I'm a member. Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm actively using Swoodeebee, like, all the time, but I'm never using the form search, because that was like a compromise. Like, the whole point of the site is the search syntax. Form search is always going to be a second-tier citizen. So I feel pained having to use a form to filter cards to build decks, because, again, the question should be, why can't I just type in, I'm a Grand Inquisitor player, show me all the things that meet this criteria?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was building that, and that was a pain, but I did it, and I got it there. But it revealed inefficiencies in the search syntax. And I was like, oh man, it's one thing when people are typing in from the front page, but if it's like you're updating constantly while you're building a deck, you're not answering questions, you're trying to build a list, and you're hitting it 10 times as often, and more people are using it.
Boy,
it's going to get, like, I need to solve this before I ship it. So I started working on that, and that revealed some. So Swoodeebee has almost no JavaScript that I've written. I think if you're a web dev, Swoodeebee in production right now has south of 100 lines of JavaScript written by me, Parker. And of that, like 80 of it is just translating my backend objects into chart.js to build the charts, because turns out there are no tools anymore that are free that are backend tools for building graphs, because if you want a free tool to build graphs, turns out chart.js is like fantastic. Like it's open source and everybody can use it. So why not? So I actually had to write a little JavaScript for that, and that's basically it. But there's more and more things I want to do, and they all kind of require JavaScript. Things like you think are part of the internet, like fundamental, like that. Even I've been doing this for now almost a decade, and blown away that multi-select is not like something that's built into HTML. The drop-down, that you can build with just like raw HTML, make it look nice with CSS. But if you want to check 2 boxes, you need JavaScript. So I started struggling with this, and I started thinking to myself, this policy of no JavaScript. It was fun when it was an experiment, but I'm in production now, and maybe I could put a little JavaScript in.
Were you like one of those as seen on TV commercials where you're holding like 20 pens and then you start dropping some and then it goes, "There's got to be a better way."
Yeah, right. Yes. I was like, it was more like when you like hide the ice cream from yourself, but then you like can hear it. Because here's the thing: if you're not a software developer, that you should know about JavaScript. JavaScript, it's like glitter or herpes. There's not a little bit of JavaScript. Like you either have it or you don't. Once it's there, there's just a lot of JavaScript.
It expands to the constraints of its environment.
Yeah, that's called Flex.
Yeah.
It is. It is. So like the more I thought, I was like, well, where do I, once I like cross the Rubicon, once I say, you know what, I'm doing some JavaScript, then it's like, well, but I made this compromise over here that I wouldn't have to make if I had JavaScript in it. By the time, and so this was my November, is like just wrestling with like solving these problems while maintaining this kind of principle. And this principle actually is like, again, part of it's informed by my idea that nobody cares about Parker. This is not Parker's website. There shouldn't be big gloss. Like the websites that blow my mind. I was into Marvel Snap for a while, and coming to Marvel Snap from Netrunner and Marvel Champions were like an Arkham DB, Marvel CDB, Netrunner DB, which are these like austere websites that are like, would you like pictures of the cards and stats? We've got you. And then you go to like the Marvel Snap websites, and they all just look like, bleh, like they just look like so many colors and animations and autoplay videos, and you're just like,
the card is popping out and like doing the little animation, the little TikTok dance.
And, it does it in the game, right? Like so, like fair, but like the website is just like and I want none of that. But also like, there's a great article that talks about. So imagine, if you will, that you lose your phone and your laptop.
Okay.
Right? And this is a experiment, right? So no tablets. Right?
Sure.
Like assume your day-to-day devices are gone. How far could you get in the world with your worst browser? That's the question. I'll post a link in the YouTube comments. How far would you get with your worst browser, right? Like the Nintendo Switch has a browser, but like, can you imagine like trying to pay your taxes or your student loans through your Nintendo Switch, right? Like it's technically a browser, but like, is it returning HTML or is it returning like some weird Microsoft Word document embedded in a frame, right? Like, and so it's this kind of thought experiment for web developers of like, sometimes people need access from terrible devices. Like we can't keep designing the web for people with 4K monitors and so forth. Like, that informs a lot of what I do. But I kind of had a moment around Thanksgiving. I was like, Swoodeebee is not gov.uk, right? Like Swoodeebee is not a place where people go to find out about their utilities or their public benefits. It is a supplementary website to a luxury card game, right? Like if you are worried about Star Wars Unlimited, there's a good chance you have some device that's been in the last 10 years. And if you don't, solve that problem first. So I decided
to give into your
in early
hatred.
December. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's actually. See, here's the thing about JavaScript. I still don't like it.
Right.
I have it now, right?
Sure.
And I have to call all the people I've ever done development with and tell them that I have JavaScript. And I don't like it, but I hate it. But I have JavaScript now. See, in early December, I made the decision that if you can't declare technical bankruptcy on your own hobby website, where can you? I was tired of all of November, stressing about these kind of poor decisions of the code you write for an experiment and the code you write when you know you're going to be supporting a robust community are two different codes. And I wanted to invite more developers in. Ned, by the way, earlier I said Ned's doesn't do much with Swoodeebee, but big shout out to the Home One Bridge crew, the people who have been helping me with a lot of the things I know nothing about. They are chomping at the bit. Rycon and MacFerg, the whole team, they're chomping at the bit to help more, but I wrote that code base on vacation. I was drinking, right? I was making very selfish, lazy choices. I was aggressively leaning into bad practices, right? It's not even that moment in your head where you're one day we're going to have to re-architect this. I'm going to regret this choice. It was don't care, just solving today's problem. And
woohoo, YOLO!
That was me giving into the hate, right? Yeah. And so I'm terrified to give them that code base, right? I don't want people to see me at my worst. So, starting December, I have been rewriting the Swoodeebee code base. All of it. 90% of it, keeping some of the original database models, and I think Akbar is going to make it through it mostly unscathed, and that's it. That's everything else I've rewritten it. But
there's a big but.
No but.
Oh.
And yes, and I want to say two things first. The first is that I want to apologize to a lot of people, because I kind of, in December, went into goblin mode, right? Ned, you've been my friend. You've kind of seen me. I come home from work, and I hang out with my kids, and my kids go to bed, and I haven't, spent quality time, having a conversation with my wife in, a month. I have been in pure goblin mode, and that includes Ned. So, on this show, in our relationship outside the show, we have a kind of self-effacing nature about ourselves, and we tease because we love, and so I occasionally dunk on you, and I think in the context of you and me at a coffee shop or grabbing a burrito, it's 100% fine. And I'm sometimes a little self-conscious about let's do it in front of 1,000 people and tease you.
I mean, dunk away.
So
dude.
no.
Yeah.
So, but I want to show that it is a two-way street. I just happen to talk more. Here's your chance, Ned. How would you describe my ability to respond to communications in a timely manner?
Okay, so let's imagine, if you will, you're in the trenches of World War I, right? You're releasing a carrier pigeon, right? This carrier pigeon is containing your request for reinforcements, right? And you're not sure what's going to happen to that carrier pigeon. That carrier pigeon, it's flying. It's got to go through no man's land. It's a dangerous. You don't get to know whether the pigeon's arrived or not. But every so often, a little pigeon will return and contain new orders for you. And so I feel like my communication with you has been of the pigeon variety. You release the pigeons and maybe they come back and maybe they don't.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Ned and I are in a tabletop group, and I am the game moderator, the dungeon master. And if you ever wanted to helm a tabletop game and are bad at coordination, that is a social expectation that is not part of the role of the game, and I believe that militantly, vehemently, because I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at social coordination. And any kind of planning, scheduling, communicating energy I have to save for work. So my work requires a lot of it, and it's not my natural instinct, and so then we get even less. So I'll be like, hey, Ned, we should do X. Why don't you send out a doodle? And then Ned will send out a doodle, and everybody else will respond to the doodle.
Tally Cal is the new doodle. Thank you.
Tally Cal's the new doodle.
Tally Cal is the new doodle.
Definitely not first.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ned will send out a Tally Cal. You see, I would know that if I ever clicked the link. And so he'll send it, and then he'll like ping me twice, being like, hey, don't forget the Tally Cal. Like, and then I still won't respond to him. And then he'll be like, all right, well, everybody, I picked the night that works best for everybody. And then I'll be like, that night doesn't work for me. And again, I'm the GM. So and like, that's just been like the last 10 years in Ned's life.
Damn.
So the reason why I bring that up is to say, like, this is how I treat my friends. So if you have emailed or sent a message on Patreon or sent a message on Discord in the last like month, like almost 2 months now, like basically since Thanksgiving, that's on me. I have a strong anxiety about increasing notification numbers, and they are real big and they're terrifying. And I will get through them. But so Goblin mode. So building out the website has taken everything, and it's almost here. If you're watching this, you're going to be able to go use it as an alpha. But before I tell you about that, I want to remind you that earlier in the episode, I talked about how Fantasy Flight has, decreed, it's fine, pro, that our numbers reflect something that in and of themselves, the Force Unlimited as an entity has a certain amount of reach, and that reach does not merit a card preview. That's fine. If you were here for our previous card previews, you know that Ned and I have a style. If you've been a long time dear listener, you know that we have our bit.
Yes.
Kind of an Andy Kaufman thing where we build up to the card reveal and then drag it out a long time. It's not funny.
No.
Right? Like,
no. It's like
I don't even think we find it funny.
Yeah.
Like we enjoy it.
Yeah,
but it's this weird.
You got it's denial, right? Like you got to tease him a little bit.
It's just I think it's that Man on the Moon stuff,
Yeah.
right? It's Andy Kaufman. I mean, like if you're into, God, man, the amount of people who play Star Wars Unlimited who are also into professional wrestling, I have learned more in the last 18 months about professional wrestling than I orders of magnitude more than I knew before May 8th of 2023. Then if you know professional wrestling, then you know about how Andy Kaufman in the ring. And I feel like that's your and my vibe for card previews. So before I tell you where the new Swoodeebee Alpha is that you can go use right now, I want to hear about Ned. Last weekend you went and played at the Portland Planetary Qualifier. Let's take some time to talk about that.
Oh, so I went and I played in the Portland Planetary Qualifier. It went pretty well. I finished 5-2, just outside of the top cut, which, 128-person tournament, not finishing in the top 8.
Hey, 128-person tournament, the first American or North American tournament to fire with the full 128. I mean, I think, the most competitive, by numbers, I don't know about talent pool, but most competitive North American PQ. So, take note in that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I finished 5-2, placing the 21st with a cut to the top 8. So even if it had been a cut to the top 16, I would not have qualified. But I feel good about like a 5-2 finish. I think that adequately reflects my positioning in like the top 20% of SWU players in the Pacific Northwest region.
I mean, you're still, like, as far as waking giants go, like, you're still waking, right? Like, I mean, like, congratulations on your first, like attempt at really grinding out something, like, meta.
Yeah.
And not, like, trying to come in sideways, but just saying, of the talent pool, the leader pool that is good, I'm going to choose this. I'm so elated.
So on that subject, I played Django Tarkentown. It performed about as well as I expected, where my 2 losses, one came against a double red Kylo deck that was wild, where game 1 actually ended in a tie, where they killed us both with Chaos of War, and then we had to call a judge to figure out what the outcome was, and the answer is you just play more games. You play games until somebody wins too. But again,
luckily you're both playing fast decks.
Double red Kylo versus Django Tarkentown. We still finished with like 20 minutes left in the round. And then My other loss was to the current, I think, scourge of the meta, maybe going so far as to say a double yellow Han, but...
Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah. Right? Like, Boba was the worst, but the problem... Boba was, like, bannable because, like, he was pushed as a leader, but a lot of the problem is just that double yellow card pool. Like, the yellow pool is just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... I have very limited regrets. I think I played well. I think I maybe could have squeaked out a couple more games here and there. I don't think the double yellow Han matchup was... I think that I made a couple of misplays that I could have done better, and I will do better next time. Hopefully, I'm not sure if I would pilot Django Tarkentown going forward. I think that it's reasonably well positioned, where I absolutely stunted on a wide variety of hero green decks. I faced double green Palp.
That feel good.
Yeah, no, it did. It did feel good. Like, because, back when I was playing GI Blue, the thing that I regretted most was seeing like green villainy decks, because I couldn't close it out before they ramped into their big stuff, and then the big stuff was just too big. But Django Tarkentown is faster than... Who knew that playing a more aggressive, more meta deck is faster than playing like the off-meta, like slow aggro deck, slow and vulnerable aggro deck that immediately folds to overwhelming barrage. Gosh.
Right. So speaking of bigger, so I'm super curious and hyped to see about the sector qualifiers and the regional qualifiers.
Yes.
I cannot wait to see where they're announced, because I don't think this year that's a thing that I am destination flying for, but destination driving, like San Francisco to Vancouver, I think.
You would drive to San Francisco?
Might be too far.
That's I was gonna say San Francisco's a hot drive from here.
Yeah. But Seattle, and that's
Seattle's
the thing.
Not bad. Seattle's 2 hours. It's not so bad. Yeah.
We could do Seattle. I'm very curious. Would you, if they put one in a place that is feasible for us to go, which is a huge if, because on the one hand, like, we can fill a full PQ, which is something that there are not many places in the United States that can say that. The flip side of the coin is listening to like Golden Dice, who are like all the folks on the East Coast who are able to hit up like 3 or 4 PQs per season, whereas for us 2 is ambitious.
Yeah.
Who knows if they'll put one that's within reach of us, but if they did, would you still run Django Tarkentown?
I think I would want to do a little bit more research here. I think that Django is fading a little bit, where I think that it's still faster than a lot of other decks, but I think that Sabine Green has a little bit more punch. I think that Django can outrace Sabine Green, and
I think Django's really strong in the Sabine, just because, like, aggro deck that has all its units tapped out isn't very aggro-y. And the yellow villain top end is better than Sabine's top end.
Yeah, but I do think that, like, double yellow Han kind of stunts on Django a little bit, and then it's also going to depend on what the control share is, where villain blue control you can win, and I did win against a villain blue control deck, but I think that, like...
Was it Gar Saxon?
It was not. It was Krennic. It was Krennic. So it was Krennic Green. But, like, Kira is a little bit more stable. I've had trouble in my practice games against Kira Green. Not, like, hyper trouble, but, like, reasonable trouble. So I would want to read the tea leaves a little bit more. And obviously there's a new set coming out, and that's gonna shake up the meta in ways. But I think that I would definitely put Django in my consideration file. And I think that there are some optimizations that I could do to the deck that would improve it. For one, I think that I way over-teched against control. I had way more cards than I needed. I needed to put in some more stuff against, I think, specifically double yellow Han. I think that if I had a slightly better sideboarding scheme against double yellow Han, I could have done better. But, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about the PQ before we just finish up whatever other conversations we were having?
It was a really good time. I strongly recommend that you go to your local PQ, even if you don't think that you're going to be running a competitive deck. I think it's good to go. I think that in general, a lot of people have a lot of kind of internalized, what if I lose? But, like, you will lose, and that's fine, right? Like, get over yourself, right?
I mean, the best way to get good is to start bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, you just got to. I was talking to somebody there. So my entire family came down and rah-rahed for Ned.
And you brought a burrito. Thank you. Although my wife
I was about to say, thank you for introducing me. I went back, and so Ned told me to pick up a burrito from a place called, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Birria?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I am not the Spanish speaker in the pair here. Yeah.
That's fair. Well, and they make high quality, authentic food cart Mexican food, and it was quite good. And I got a burrito per Ned when I went the first time. Ned told me they make a Crunchwrap Supreme,
they do,
but with like really high quality ingredients. So we went back, Maya and I. That was good.
I know.
I think
it's so good.
It's got like Takis.
Yeah.
Is it Takis
yeah,
in there?
it is
And
Takis.
I was just like,
oh man, it is.
It was so good. I mean, don't we like? They,
yeah.
I mean, we got the full like PDX sampler with like the consomme and everything. Like, there was a lot of really good food, but and also it was like I wouldn't eat it. Like, it kind of failed the actual requirement of what you want out of a Crunchwrap Supreme.
Which is that you can eat it in a car. Yeah.
You can eat it in a car, right? Like, it's supposed to compete with the burger. Like, you can't eat most Mexican food while you're driving. Burritos, technically, but a good burrito's
no, it just slops everywhere. Yeah.
No, so like the Crunchwrap Supreme, like that's the I love it for that one reason is that you can eat it while you're driving. This no, you would not eat this Crunchwrap Supreme while driving. It was awful. I mean, it was delicious, but it would have been so messy. But so thank you for putting that in my life, because I absolutely, that was a game changer.
Yeah, no, and there's one right near you. You don't have to go downtown to get it, right? Yeah.
All the best food in Portland is now in Beaverton. It is just a statement that I keep making because it becomes increasingly true. All right, if you're not from Portland, you don't care.
I mean,
Portland,
shout out to they're close enough to Guardian Games that if you play an aggro deck like, say, Django Tarkentown, you have enough time between rounds to go grab yourself.
But you don't even have to. Just get, like, befriend your co-host's 3-year-old daughter, and like, my daughter would bring you a burrito anywhere, Ned. Like, you are literally the top of the list. Maybe after my brother for her birthday.
I mean, I think he is more fun than I am, just like empirically speaking. So
I mean, he's not worn out by his own kid. Anyways, none of this is relevant to literally anybody else but us. The subtitle of our show.
Yeah.
So PQ, good. Go to yours.
Yeah.
Back to the original topic at hand: the ghosts of Swoodeebee future. So where is Swoodeebee going? If you are listening to this, and actually since the start of the episode that I've been dragging out, if you have been, if you're listening to this, you can go to swoodeebee.net, and you can see an alpha version of what swoodeebee.com will become. It's live now as we're recording.
Do you have like a little grave of like Tiny Tim somewhere on the site just to continue the bit?
No, I'm absolutely not. No, Ned, I have been working every night. There's the time for gold plating is past. But actually, I'm not going. This is an audio podcast first and foremost. Sometimes we throw graphs up here, but for the most part, I want to acknowledge that the primary use for our audience is people with long commutes and a lot of patience.
Or people writing code who want something like noise on in the background that you can listen to while you write code. Not that I've ever done that to this fine podcast, but I have done that to other podcasts.
That's fair. Yeah. I cannot do words while coding. Anyways, swoodeebee.net. You've already left. Like 90% of our audience.
Yeah, they're gone. They're on the new website. Right.
Yeah. This is an audio podcast, so I don't want to like go through everything that's changing, because a lot is changing. But I wanted to talk about a couple policy decisions briefly. Just go to swoodeebee.net. It is...
What's that address again, Parker?
Swoodeebee.net. SWUDB. But I also bought the .net while I was getting the .com.
Yeah, might as well, yeah.
And I've had no use for it. It's just been forwarded to .com, but now it points to its own server. It has a copy of Swoodeebee. It is not pointed at the same database. You will be able to log in with your password, but you will not. Any changes you make there are
not mirrored. Not
mandala.
Yeah.
They will not translate to swoodeebee.com, and they will not be preserved. Anything you create there, gone in like a week. However, you can just copy a deck that you make in the new deck builder to JSON and paste it into Swoodeebee. I mean, like, all the links from Swoodeebee will continue to work. It is very much an alpha, and it is about 80% complete. At the time I make the conversion, which I'm planning on doing in the first week of February, it will be about 95% complete. So you will, if you're there, there are some key features missing. For example, you can build decks there now using the search syntax, but there's no deck building form. You must use the search syntax to build decks. give me about 2 or 3 more days and the form will be there. Because it turns out once you've done the search syntax, just wrapping it in a form is trivial. It's like press buttons, search syntax behind the scenes, boom, done. The search syntax is so much more expressive than a form. So there's a lot of new features, and we're not going to cover them because you could just go use it, and you can get on the community Discord and you can ask me about it. But I wanted to talk about a couple of choices that we've made, or I've made. This is why people think you're involved, Ned. Have some policy decisions. The big one is you can now edit published decks. So published decks, you can publish them, share them with the world. So if, for example, like late night gaming, you have the top deck, and then after playing on a show, you realize you want to swap out some of the sideboard cards, you can do that and retain your spot. The reason why I've changed that is that because when I was talking to the community that existed in like July through October of 2023, there was this idea of like, should we edit decks? And the garbage rollers actually were, specifically in Inception, very angry when I took away the ability to edit decks. I wanted a place to preserve like event decks.
What is the snapshot? Show me what Boba Yellow looked like right before the ban. Right. Yeah.
And when Swoodeebee launched the deck builder, you could edit published decks. The famous example for me is Home One Derby, where there was a deck that was published before it was a Han yellow deck before Han had been spoiled. And it started out as a Leia deck. And then it was like Han was spoiled, and it was like, oh, this is actually so much better. And so the leader was swapped out, and the fundamental nature of what the deck was changed. So I wanted a snapshot at this PQ, this deck, but that's not how Swoodeebee is being used. Because I mean, it is being used, but the true desire of the community is to have here is my archetype for this meta. I want to share my Django Tarkentown deck, and that I'm playing in this Twilight meta, but it's going to shift as we kind of find things out, and here's what I'm playing. And so it's not getting published on Swoodeebee. It's getting shared as an unlisted deck and then disseminated elsewhere through Discord or Reddit or whatever, and people are just like keeping track of their decks, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of tracking what is the hot deck.
Yeah.
So that is a policy shift, that published decks can be edited only. This is the old conservator of rights hat. It will be decks made going forward, published decks going forward. Old ones are still locked because if I say they're locked, and then you can retroactive, so from archival purposes. But sometime in the next 2 to 3 months, and I'm so optimistic and excited to share with everybody what Swoodeebee.com is about to become, because again, it took me 18 months to build the site the way it is now, and I've rebuilt it in a matter of weeks. So I'm able to do in a night what took me 2 to 3 weeks to do. I'd like to start having like a separation between published decks, which is just like hot, cool stuff, and event decks, which is, and those will be less, not uneditable, but less editable, because again, there's an idea of like, why do you need to go in 6 months later and change who played? When you allow that kind of editing, you run into somebody who's just angry about the game because they've announced that Mara Jade isn't going to be in this new set, and so they just go through and they change all of their decks. Since they can't delete them, they'll just go through and change all of them, so it's just 50 copies of You're My Only Hope, and so you got to lock it down a little bit. But published decks are going to be editable. Also, I've completely changed the collection page to work the way everybody always asks for it to work. I really like the whole images and everything, but it's just going to be, and I'm going to bring that back, but I decided since I'm building from scratch, the first version is one everybody wants, which is just a giant list of cards, expandable to variants and tracking. The one, Ned, the search syntax is faster, it is cleaner, and now, big request from a lot of people, the syntax can handle double aspects pretty trivially. So you can just say, show me the cards that are double yellow, or show me the cards that are,
yellow black. Yeah.
Any double, right? Like you can just say is double. Yeah. And just get all the double cards. So that's going to be pretty nice. Tons of other stuff. People wanted drop downs and buttons for all the imports as opposed to having, it's such a pain in the butt to copy the CSVs in that, wouldn't it be nice to just say, I bought this starter, boom, in your collection. I'm changing my decks, so it should be a lot nicer and smoother with a lot of drop-down menus and so forth. I think I'm very optimistic. I think the site's going to be so much better than it ever was. I will acknowledge, it's going to be better for like 95% of people. If you are very, very, very far away from San Francisco and you are running on an older machine, like I said, it might be a little worse. It might be a slight downgrade for you. Hopefully,
are we talking in terms of like speed or in terms of like functionality? Because you mentioned like distance from San Francisco. Is it just that like it's not, if you're used to editing decks in your smart fridge, it's not going to necessarily work on your smart fridge anymore?
It might not work on your smart fridge, and it might. Now, in theory, like a lot of things, like the images and the searching is going to be cached in a what's called a CDN, which means the images are going to be kind of stored all over the world, and the images will load faster. But any data that has to go to the database, it's just modern JavaScript is a little heavier, right? Like Swoodeebee was like a rough server, but what it was sending across the wire was
very tight,
minimal. Yeah. And that sensibility still informs me and how I write code, but a little bit more of it. Hopefully, though, for like because again, one of the primary use cases in my mind is I'm going to Vegas, and when we are in Vegas, we're going to be asking questions about about Star Wars Unlimited. There's going to be like 3,000 people in that auditorium, just like hammering the Wi-Fi. And wouldn't it be nice if the questions we were asking were light packets that were going back and forth, as opposed to pulling down, and all of that. So that sensibility is still there, but I have so much that I expect to come out before JTL. Last thing, so it's out now on .NET. Go play with it.
That
you can't
is
sign up.
Swoodeebee.net.
Yeah, you can't sign up because that functionality is still about 3 days out. If you haven't signed up for Swoodeebee.com yet, you are not entitled to use Swoodeebee.net. And
you are being entitled if you assume that you can use Swoodeebee.net, one should say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn. Oh.
No. And I am very aware, we are in the middle of preview season.
Are we?
We're in the middle of PQ season. So, deck images are really important for people because, like, content creators are making new decks for JTL, and those PDF forms are really important to people because they're printing them out and taking them to their PQs. I do not want to break anything, so like I'm going fast, and I've taken a couple days off of work to make the transition. I will announce kind of loud and clear, but the new code base is coming in a matter of days, but if you want to come play with it, Swoodeebee.net, and give me some feedback on what the new things. Be gentle as I finish up the last couple features, but man, I searched for cards in there, and it's like, so great. I was talking to a Gandorg, and I was like, man, I live in the future. Like, I'm using the site the way I dreamed it in my head, and it's so much better than reality. So please come down to Swoodeebee.net and give me your feedback, gentle feedback. Discord is probably the best. Yeah, that is the ghost of Swoodeebee future. A lot of new stuff is going to be coming. I'm talking to a couple people about some new stuff, and I'll be opening up the code base to the Home One Bridge crew before JTL drops, and then, I was writing it in something that was esoteric. I have to be one of like 10 people in the world using my combination in production of HTMX plus outdated .NET plus Razor pages. If you've ever used running on Linux, like if you've ever my tech stack was unique, and I could not ask for help, and I have now chosen a tech stack that is very common. It's a very popular tech stack.
So you're saying you've moved from using the off-meta tech stack to using the meta tech stack?
Exactly. Yes. But like when I say off-meta, like we're not talking like the Crunchwrap Supreme. Like we're talking like somebody who's trying to build like a unitless Sabine deck, right? Like it's me, right?
Just
like,
burn.
It's me. There's nobody else doing this.
You got 4 copies for Chibi, 4 copies, Daring Raid, and then I don't know, man.
Your magic is showing, Ned. You only get 3 copies in Star Wars Unlimited.
So. You're right. Damn.
So I'll be able to give out the code base. I'm not open sourcing it, but I will be able to like share it with people who want to help, and I'll be able to get that help. And I expect that feature development is going to pick up a lot. 2025 is going to be a good year for the DB. I also think it's going to be a good year for Star Wars Unlimited. We've got competitive play. We've got Galactics. Like We've got, I think, what are going to be some very spicy sets. I'm excited about that. But yeah, that's it. I have been talking for over an hour, so I think it's time we wrap this up. Ned, do you have any final thoughts about the episode?
Parker, as much as I appreciate your dedication to the Christmas Carol, I think that this was an Iron Man story where you originally built something rough and ready in a cave in a week that other people weren't able to replicate, and then you started off the episode by announcing that you are in fact Iron Man. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta make my son listen to this episode. He'll think I'm the coolest. Thank you, Ned. Dear listener, if you have any thoughts about this, especially this episode, jump into the comments. Do not email me. I have so many emails I need to reply to. I feel so guilty. Jump into Discord. The community Discord has a Swoodeebee thread.
You can also email the Force Unlimited. You don't have to email
at gmail.com, and
yes.
Ned will respond in a timely manner.
Yes.
Ned carries that email address.
I do.
I was reading an email that Ned had responded to like 4 months ago, like last week. I was reading the email for the first time. Yeah, this is The Force Unlimited, and we'll talk to you about math, why math models, in a couple weeks.
Mathematical models. It'll be a good time. You can never guess what particular thing we might be modeling, but yeah, it'll be a party.
Adios.